Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Zafina Suresh. I'm the director of IU in India, Indiana University, India Gateway. It's a pleasure to welcome you all to our center today. Uh, I would like to just add a bit about the work that we do here. And before we have the launch of the book, She Was Not Die, Extraordinary Clinical Sing in India. So since 2014, since our office opened, we have been fostering a lot of higher education connection, a lot of faculty, senior faculty research, and providing experiential learning for students in India as well as students at Indiana University. And uh, as our objective is to create international education opportunities for Indian students as well as giving them other opportunities to experience IU in India. We do a lot of activities here, and the book launch is one of those activities that we have organized for this month. And I would like to take this opportunity to actually talk a bit about the book launch event. We're honored to have Mr. Prakash Singh this evening as a chief guest. We also have Mr. Ram Sevak Sharma and Rishi Shukla to, as panel discussants. We warm welcome to you, sir, for gracing this occasion. IU is one of those universities which have the India Studies program or India Studies program, which is focused on just a research on topics within India. And Professor Arvind Verma is one of the faculty of the India Studies, Professor of Criminal Justice at Indiana University, Bloomington. Before I hand it over to him, I would like to add that we have dinner today, and we welcome you all to sort of have dinner with your co. And please do feel free to connect with us if you have any questions or queries after the session. I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate Professor Arvind Verma as well as my best wishes for the book launch. I invite you to this. You want to hear the book? So, as a token of appreciation, we'd like to give these books to Professor Prakash Singh. Ram Singh. And Rishi Shukla. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Zafina. I want to begin by thanking all of you for looking forward for a very long period of time. I'm particularly grateful to Mr. Prakash Singh for inspiration. Very, very grateful that I have found time to come today. I together for such a long period of time. And interestingly, there are a number of stories in which has been there. Some of the stories obviously not price for him. A good number of them also knows about. Thank you, Rishi, for taking the time to come all the way from Bangladesh. I heard a lot about you the first time. I'm very grateful to come. Thank my other colleagues from these Manjuri, Sanjay, on. Thank you so much. It means a lot after years come and support you. Really, many of my friends from IIT who are here, it means a lot. The remember me in the IIT, it's hockey, but as you can see, I tried to learn my I'm also very grateful for a number of my students running a course from IIT, data analysis, and some of my students, of course, have come from long distance. They consider themselves to be students, but actually, these my guru learns a lot from them. Thank you for this invitation. My friends and my family members are here. My wife, and others, and this also. And thank you so much. Your real support from Asia. As you may know, in my second avatar of criminal justice scholar, say, my focus has been on criminal justice, particularly police. Authored a number of very large number of books. Say therefore research something which all of you know that criminal justice actually here. We have serious problems. The reality of police that comes out is that have a force is heavily politicized that it is becoming the strong arm of a ruling party. State. On top of that, we have following a colonial model. Colonial model is itself creating problems. Therefore, we have a system which is matched, leading to all kinds of problems. Officers here trust them, use their authority. Corruption is there. Most importantly, we don't have a system accountable. This is one reality. There is another reality coming out today, which book is all about. These officers everywhere, particularly in India, face situation that challenge. They have to problems not through lawful the law, but it also involves creativity, innovation, ordinary conflicts involving past, innovation, on and on, really require solution which must take into account critical reality and must also be of justice. And I call this is essentially called problems. And it is this kind of a problem solving that, to my mind, needs standing and also a different approach institutionally. Because you have to understand that this is the role and need to recognize and acknowledge that, and therefore try and do something about it. And it is this newness of the approach that sort of made me think about way of approaching it, and also encourage to try this new dress. But I should a little. My brothers and sisters must be horrified. I thought this would be a new process. One other acknowledgement that all throughout last 3 decades or so, in sir, you have written so many books, you are so lucid and formative in that. But what happens that when you adopt an academic writing, write an academic book, you make strong arguments, write some potential evidence for what we are, but it has to be done in a way which academics follow scholarly approach. That means support all your arguments, do data analysis, which makes the book complete. My previous books are those where my best friends have asked them, given them the books, they follow, yeah, Ultimately, they said, I'm nahi hai. Just bata do so that then I can. I've been very, very unfortunate in terms of after writing so much, I don't think my book has been able to reach quickly, especially address people who need to hear. It was in that kind of a mode that I was teaching my family at my children. Now that they are grown up, what actually fun, the opposite. All the stories that I have out here, these stories are personal stories, patient, way that they have been approached, kind of a policing, right? Encouraged by my children and my wife, said that I might take try and write. And this has been a very difficult process, surprisingly, because writing a story not seems real more effort. I also believe very strongly. Of course, there is a lot of negativity all around us. Each day there is criticism. But there are officers and there are situations who are trying to. So rather than just trying to criticize what is not being done, why not focus on things that they are doing? So it was with those kind of thoughts that I decided to uh, develop this book, that I write some stories. But those stories actually have some implication. There are five that I want to talk about. First, we must acknowledge that the police in India are very narrowly conceived. We think of police as only involved in crime. But no, as I mentioned, police are facing a variety of problems that society has are brought to the police officer. So they have to therefore find some. Therefore, police role is actually one of problem solving. This has been recognized by human team. These are problem solvers. But for India, this is really big. So that's one thing that I want. This is an important issue of problems. Secondly, we have a constitution, we have a law, and law emphasizes due process for the police. They are facing process. But law will only set a boundary. Law cannot define what exactly the police officer has to do because they have to define, state that in very broad terms. And therefore, that leaves a lot of discretion to the police officer. Given a situation, they can act in one or many other ways. And one easy way to try and sort of understand that is to focus upon that police are, of course, law enforcement, enforce the laws. And therefore, I always ask my students, how many laws do you think there are? Because enforcement is done by the police, and whose violation can actually lead you for some kind of a police action. And the answer to this simple question of how many laws there are is surprisingly very, very difficult to answer because there is actually no real count. There's a Canadian law commission that was entrusted with us. And Canada has very similar situation with India. And believe it or not, they reached a figure of something like 40,000 and then gave up saying, enumerate how many laws there are in which situations be enforced. Think about it. There's so many laws, and as police officers, we focus only upon a few limited property or not. But there are laws, for example, of you interpret the laws in terms of enforcement for enforcement purposes, money laundering, sorry, money lending, bonded labor, on and on, which affect people in a very, very different manner. So we as police officers essentially choose which laws we are going to enforce. And that gives us tremendous power. And it also emphasizes very clearly in my another book that politicization of the police is natural because police are essentially playing politics. We decide which law to enforce and how to enforce in what particular circumstances. Of course, there's some pressure and some other situations, but by and large, looking into all the thousands of millions of crimes that are being registered, we decide how that should be done and which ones should pick and choose. If we realize this particular reality, then we have to think about training our officers in a different way. Train our officers for problem solving, train our officers to use their discretion in a proper manner. And if we can do that, then that is going to give rise to a new kind of a which is going to be. I'm going to come back to this issue a little later. How my stories are trying to bring this up. I want to acknowledge that all the stories are real and truthful accounts of episodes that have happened. Of course, camouflage them, liberty as the later, the sequences and on and on. My colleagues from Bihar will probably recognize a few of them because happened. And stories think that broader conceptualization of justice is what I would suggest a new form of policing conceptualizing. Again, these are not stories which are peculiar only to me. Each one of you, at least all the officers who are there, you've handled hundreds and hundreds of such episodes. You've done them in a regular manner. Just that you've not stated them, you've not stated them, but you've handled them exactly as I sort of narrate out here. So it's again not something which is exclusive to me or something peculiar. This is very common. So let me quickly narrate a few snippets. I'm going to rush through so that we can have some discussion and have some time for question and answer. So one of the stories that I have has been titled as Law. It began with this idea that even today, unfortunately, now the situation has improved, posting of a lady police officer, lady officer in any jurisdiction attracts a lot of public attention in very short numbers. I will take the liberty of identifying one of my first lady police officer from Bihar, Anjali. And she was, when she came to Patna, I told Manjari that police will be back trying to look at you going to the office, first lady officer. Sorry, I wasn't there. I joined Reuters. It's a fictional account. So when we were in a small district, rural district, lady officer in the district, and immediately attracted huge amount of lady officer smartly right, going around. This was a novelty. People were thronging on. Unfortunately, as it happens, that young officers generally have a attitude of acting like a one of those. Of course, there's another movie, I haven't seen that, called Singer. Police officers used to play movies. So that was the path that she sort of adopted when going around, and people that she beat up on the street, some young guys hanging in a girls' school, she beat them up, chased some guy, and then all was recovered from him, and Thomson applauded that. So this was something that was, and as a consequence, my young, officers really admired. That's what they really wanted to do. did a comparative study of Japan, Canada, and India. We asked officers why do you join the department. It turns out majority of the police officers join the police service because they think they want to do the public service. But they also join because of this good idea, good guy beating up the bad guy. Ah, uh, all my officers were really admiring her and they were very irritated with me. Also, due process, follow the law and all the evidence, all those things that really something that didn't really matter. Unfortunately, as happens, if you start following this particular path, then things start going wrong. Just abusing their authority. Then complaints start coming in. Started receiving a lot more complaints. Where sometimes arrested somebody, petrol dealer, or complained that not measuring the petrol that he's put to the car correctly, which wasn't so. There was no evidence, but I spent lockup and had to get bail outside. She even beat up an old lady because somebody come torturing her daughter-in-law. Little evidence. So we were getting a kind of getting into a situation where we had counseled her again and again. Please, senior officer, we need to follow the law. But with full exuberance, didn't really matter much. Then one day, serious complaint. We had a local election. The ruling party was in that election, but the district president of that ruling party made sure that all the arrangements are strong and he was his prestige there. He wanted to probably move on the party. So they were trying to do a lot of things. This was before the Session era. Elections in Bihar were still very, very bad heavy election. So the DM, we both worked very hard to make arrangements, and supervise, and deploy the forces, and make sure that the elections go smoothly. And that is when on the election day, things were going very smoothly. The town inspector called me, sir, madam has arrested this. Okay, what is the charge? I don't know, madam came and got the police station and she's gone. Both got very alarmed. We started sources and trying to find where she is. And in a very nonchalant manner, she put this guy in the police station and drove off. Now, of course, we both realize that this is a very serious situation. The president of the party station at the police station, no easy matter. When you're going to be getting calls, some calls started coming, the local media picked up. Again, it was quickly maneuver and trying happening. So we quickly tried to locate this officer and send her a message, please come quickly, come back. Brought her to her office and said, oh, well, what happened? Booth ke paas, he was people to vote. He's not standing, he's not a candidate. And how far was it from the polling booth? And what was he really saying up there? File any reports? No report, nothing of that sort. When we questioned her, then it realized that, hardly any evidence. And she also probably realized into tears. He didn't really want to sort of balance it. We should not really bring any harm to our officers and career, but we also didn't want to have a situation where we put the rest on our part. We both debated what we should be doing. Ultimately, we decided that the best way is that release. Then the DM pointed out that we say that we are releasing him, then we are acknowledging that we have arrested him. That can later on that can boomerang. Find some other methodology. We debated and said, okay. I went to the police station. And this is what I write in my book. Upon entering the police station, I acted surprised on seeing the local president sitting on the chair. Fortunately, the SHO was shrewd and not put any restraints upon him. Apanji, what are you doing here at the police station? I asked in all my naivety. Well, madam has arrested me and brought me here, he stated almost in tears. Provoked. In my ignorance. Oh no, sir. He also protested. I asked the SHO sternly, Gee, what did the madam arrest him for? But I also don't know. I was not here when she came and told the constable to sit him in the office. He was making it clear that he had nothing to do with this sordid affair. I have not done anything. The president began finding his voice too. Of course, why would he do anything wrong? Yes. Madam, say for bringing you. Go further. Sir, I was walking in the street and suddenly came in a jeep. She got down, asked me to sit behind, then brought me here. He skipped over all the related details. So I decided to play my trump card now. Did she say that she is arresting me? I asked lightly. Oh, no, sir. She did not say what I have done. We focused upon his innocence. And she did not arrest you. I clarified in simple terms. What do you mean, sir? She brought me here in a puzzle. If she had arrested you, she must inform you about the reasons for arrest. And then would have either placed some handcuff or signed a rope or put some restraint and on, put you in the lockup. I described all the serious consequences of how arrests are made. Why did she bring me here? She was not really confused. Safety. Come to the logical conclusion. Know the opposition party, they know that they are losing the election, so they want to create some ruckus. And they were trying to sort of get you involved. Oh yes, sir. I know that they will not win the election, you will win the election. And I'm not under arrest. He still did not understand why he was sitting in the police station. Of course you're not under arrest. I said as if for such an absurd situation. Then can I go home? He really wanted to make sure he had his freedom. Yes. Let me drop you home, I now offered consolation. First, my driver has brought the car inside. He began to assert his position as an important VIP. So, sent him home, came back, he fielded all the questions that were coming from the media and from headquarters and trying to somehow maneuver and make sure that the word arrest does not happen. There's some misunderstanding and some protection. And media is highly unnecessarily playing this up, and on. So finally, by the evening, things quietened down. We asked the lady officer to lie low for a few days, not speak to any journalist. The matter was diffused, and since the ruling party won the elections, in any grievances against her also were not articulated. Local district president even turned gracious and commended the young officer for enforcing the law in uniform. So I would bring this idea that a different legal ingenuity is needed in many of these situations. And let me tell you one very interesting story where this also adopted. So I've titled the story Ganga Yamuna Tesi. We know that in most of the old towns that we have in our country, there is a mixed Hindu-Muslim communities. And invariably, there are problems when religious festivals are organized. In this case, there was a old tomb, and there was a water tank around that where the processions would be taken and all the immersion would be done. Around that area, the tajiyas would be burned. And then one day, Muharram and Ganesh Chaturthi and Muslim festival both fell on the same day. So we had to prepare really very, very carefully and supervise. And what's typically done is to call all the people who are putting up the pandal and the tajiyas and sort of give them, find out what is the size and how many people are involved. And then we sequence them so that they don't come into clash. So this very careful sort of sequence of time has to be maintained in order that these will. So we did that, and then of course, Commissioner and IG boards cleared up land. These are people who are going to be involved in the celebration. Okay, good. Suddenly, 2 days before, it was called from Usman. But Radheshyam Group is not accepting the time and schedule for the procession. His action has now provoked everyone to reschedule all the events. He means no words in it. This guy was one who was a kind of an emerging politician in that district. We found that emergence of a politician is not only ideology or anything else, it's to how much nuisance value you have. How many people you can bring around and create a ruckus and come back to the administration, because that gives him the media coverage, which makes him move up the ladder. So we knew that this guy is a potential troublemaker. That's what he did. So what happened? I asked Usman Derek. So he claims that the auspicious time for the Twitter the procession is 3 hours before what we have scheduled for him. This is deliberate, since it will clash with the Muharram celebration. He explained. Moreover, when I refused to make any changes, he accused me of favoring the Muslims and being anti-Hindu. Usman was red in the face and almost stammering in narrating these character. Uh, we all knew that on Tuesday he would donate tattoos to the local Hanuman temple. So there was a story that when he was a toddler, he fell seriously ill, and one sadhu told his mother that you should pray to Lord Hanuman and donate laddus. So his mother had been doing that all throughout, and she made sure that his son also followed. So we all knew that Usman, being a Muslim, still every Tuesday he would send laddus to the local Hanuman temple. So for him to be accused of this ground, he obviously will be upset. Well, anyway, we had this problem, so we immediately called a meeting at the DM's office and called everybody and decided to see what is this issue. Obviously, Adesham was the one. He said, "Sir, this is an inauspicious time. We have checked with my pandit, and my position has to start 2 hours. It will be a problem." At this moment, the DM rose to the occasion and saved the day for all of us. Because what he did was he questioned the Panchang itself. As known, the Panchang is a detailed Hindu calendar which takes into account 5 factors: day of the week, or Tithi or lunar day, Nakshatra or the constellation, Hope and Karma. This calendar is calculated based on various aspects of astrology, like the moon phases, positions of stars and planets. Over the years, other important concepts such as Rasi, Animasha, Rahu Kal, Murut Kal, Vajikal, Indika Kal, Viji, Yamangalam, sunrise, sunset, moonrise, moonset, all these have, with specific geographical locations, have become part of the calendar. So, given the large number of Dev and Devis that we have in India, there is hardly any unanimity about what is the correctness of any one astrological calendar. The DM cast upon this broad-based interpretation of what determines an auspicious time. Call your Pandit and let him explain how he has done the calculation. He responded strongly. Pandit came. Panditji, how did you calculate that the auspicious time for the puja falls in the afternoon? DM wasted no time. Based on the Vikrami calendar, I followed the table and taken account of the movement of planets to determine the most auspicious time. He stuttered, clearly overwhelmed and nervous in facing the district officials. Show me how you've done that. DM ordered sternly. The DM had many questions about Rana, half lunar day, Yog, unisolar day, Almanac, and also the Panchang Pujan. These are standard foundational blocks of the Panchang, and the Pandit managed to answer with some trepidation. However, the DM was not easily giving in and had questions about Sade Sathi, Rahu Kalam, Togatia. We listened in amazement as the DM quizzed him about all these terms and had him verify from the Almanac. It wasn't long before the Pandit had been tied in knots, stammering in his explanation. You are aware that the Panchang is based on old time division and not on the Indian Standard Time? DM was now leading him towards admitting the error. Have you examined the time for the Udvek over here? He asked now in full command. No, sir. Full bewilderment. You should know that it is inauspicious time for any day activity. DM pressed. Yes, but the Amrit Chogati is the one that I selected. He tried to still make a desperate attempt to interpret assert his interpretation. You need to see whether the early afternoon time of the procession will fall during this break. And if so, it will create problems for everyone. PM was in full command. When the district administration worked out the schedule, I took account of the Panchang and ensured that the processions take place during these auspicious. I was challenging the Pandit. Obviously, with the DM's assertion, we stuck to the old timetable. And that's how the processions were taken out. Of course, Radhe Sham did try to delay taking out the procession and proceed slowly through the streets. Some undercover officers kept reminding the participants that both Chovania will begin by 9 p.m. and the immersion had to be done before. Belief in stars and constellations was stronger than in Radhe himself. This follows quickly the pace and reached the time before the death. So things passed very gracefully and peacefully. The commissioner was gracious enough to commend us and also gifted a gift wrap panchang to me. The story what I want to assert is that in India, we face a lot of local traditions and a lot of beliefs and social customs and on and on. And therefore, it is always useful to find some solution based upon some of this approach, rather than a pure interpretation of the law. I'll go with one more story. Yeah. This is a story about petroleum. So many of my colleagues will remember this. So what happens that whenever politicians and senior officers have to assert that they are strong and tough under crime, they want police to look tough, act tough, and above all be visible. So the demand is that you must patrol very strong. So we had a new chief minister come to the state. He was imposed by the center. He didn't have much of local standing. Nevertheless, he was brought in to be the minister. And of course, the first thing they do is, after taking oath and sitting down, they call all the officials. And the usual statement is made that I want you to work honestly and integrity and maintain order and develop the state. Not going to brook any kind of a nonsense. I'm going to give you full freedom. There won't be any kind of an interference. I want to see results. So those are the broad general statements that he made. But for the police, our direction was very clear. I want you guys to control crime. I want you to be respectful to the citizens. And I want to make sure that people feel safe. I'm going to come and check how well you're doing. I'm going to check how well you're doing. Now, what is interesting is that this is a uniform sort of a approach everywhere. That if you want to show that policing is being done properly, then you do patrolling properly. There are more people patrolling. A remarkable experiment called the Kansas City Patrol Experiment. It was found that patrolling actually has more impact. In the Kansas City, they divided the city into three sort of random police beats. In one random set of random beats, they increased patrolling. Another, they decreased patrolling. And third, they just left it. And they ran this experiment for roughly 16 months, long period of time. And after 16 months, when they analyzed all kinds of data, crime, citizen complaint, media reports, response time, and all the data that can be collected, what they found was very surprising. So there is no difference. It doesn't matter if you increase patrolling, it doesn't matter if you increase patrolling, things just remain the same. But of course, pretty about the city, at least they won't follow. Also, friends abroad also won't follow. So anyway, after hearing from the chief minister that we want to be tough on crime and we want to have a good patrolling, we put in more officers. The DGP was kind enough to give him another small set of officers. We put them on the street. For a few days, we were all supervising and running around, and patrolling is being done in a visible way. After a few days, things just fizzled down. How much you can ask the person to stand tall and straight and group in. And very quickly, started fizzling down. The DGP also improved some of the hit given, being short, trying to manage the best way that he could do. Therefore, at one night after dinner, the CM called the DG. I am regarding that he is patrolling the city, driving around with the DG in a marked car. That's when one of the officers called me and said, CM, the DGP are out there checking. We tried to run very quickly and got into our cars and sort of find ways to come in front of the CM's car. But it so happened that they took a sort of a tour of the city, probably never saw even a single petrol. The CM was still generous. He went back and said, well, I think people are feeling safe and secure. I found families walking the street. People are feeling secure, but we should have more petrol. Because the DGP was furious. DGP called us and fired and what the hell is going on? Why is not patrolling you? What are you guys doing? I tried to reason saying that we have done an analysis, we know when crimes happen, where they happen. That's why we're trying to patrol them. Patrolling should also be visible. You should have police officers visible on the street because that gives them. That was a good advice. What we did was we put officers on all the crossroads of the main crossroads of the street. So starting from those of you who know the city, you know that from the railway station to the Bangla Chowra to this Chowra to that Chowra, everywhere we had some officers. And of course, patrolling has to be done in 3 shifts. You want to have them all the time. So that means for each unit, you have to have sort of 3 times the number. Patrol wherever we could and try to do that. And actually, that had a very good impact. Because now people like judges, high court judges, and prominent citizens and retired officers who drive in their own chauffeured cars could just walk and see, and they saw police officers at every nook and corner. Team's family also sort of commented, saying, "How patrolling ho gayi, itna tight patrolling chal rahi." Team commented the DGP, and of course, DGP was also happy. Again, this is difficult to sustain. So the patrol officers, they are asked to stand at the crossroad and don't know what to do. Sort of show that they are visible there. Very soon they started sitting down, drinking tea. Some started playing cards. That was immediately highlighted. Then we had to supervise and tell them, now you have to do that. So we thought them, you should do this. You should just not stand there. Ask people and see if you have any suspicious characters, and then you should try and check who they are. We started making them do some of those kind of functions. That, of course, basically doesn't make any difference to the crime. Crime was happening, but the positive citizen feedback was still very positive. This वाला क्या करेगा? वही जाता है. But one day, some things really happened. We had a leader of opposition, former chief minister, come out of the railway station on a rickshaw with a companion. Reaching the railway station late at night from a suburban train, he quietly came out with his companion and took a rickshaw. He had a blanket wrapped around his shoulders, a monkey cap on his head, and thick glasses that covered most of his face. He had a rusted tin box for his possessions and a bag loosely hung over the shoulder. The companion, though younger, also had a small bundle of clothes in a black cotton bag dangling from his knees. The two proceeded to his residence some distance away from the railway station. However, vigilant officers, told to be on the lookout for suspicious characters, accosted them coming out from his dhoti kurta and scraggy beard fitted the profile of dangerous offenders. As would happen, was immediately coming out of the railway station, he was accosted. People came and said, "Who are you?" And he didn't want to tell his name. So they became even more suspicious. What he said, bag में क्या है, on and on. They didn't find anything. Then they lectured him. आप रात में ऐसे घूमते रहते हैं. Somebody will steal your bag, your box, and then you'll come to the police. You will make us work harder. After that crossroad, when he went to the next crossroad, other vigilant party, they also stopped him. They also had the same lesson for him. Unfortunately for him, he accosted 2, 3 such crossroads. And there was also a patrolling party that we had involved. So the patrolling party also came and they also accosted him. And he was lectured and sort of humiliated again and again. So when finally he reached home, the first thing he did was, of course, to call the DGP. He woke the DGP at night was to say, DGP got equally more angry and called the SP. Woken up, and it took time for the SP to sort of wake up. And there's a part of it takes about 2 is the DG got even more angry. Fired by the DGP. What the hell is happening? Oh, go to him and apologize and देखिए कुछ करिए क्या. We immediately sent the information to the police line to find out who were the patrol officers in those areas. उनका roster निकालिए और तुरंत orderly rumor बनाइए morning में and then went to the politician. Meanwhile, one smart officer who was following this quietly told the SP, "Sir, the politician had a bodyguard. He was not there. Why wasn't he? Sir, a bodyguard to उन्होंने गांव में भेजा. And the bodyguard is actually supervising his farm and looking after. So far, so he was not there. This would be useful. Very, very happy. Immediately went to the politician's house. It was early morning now. The astute politician had not wasted his time. At early morning, he had called some of the journalists to articulate the high-handedness of police and mistreatment of ordinary people. By the time the SP reached his house, the journalists had this story. He rushed to the SP asking about his version. Sir, what do you have to say about your officers harassing common people? One called out. Sir, your police do not even spare an old man. Another added sarcastically. Are we living in the police Raj? Question frequently not insensitive. SP was a seasoned officer and anticipating such complaints, so he was surprised that the journalists were already informed about the episode. No, I'm sorry what happened, but we live in a democratic society and police respects rights of all citizens. He began an apologetic note. Why are you officers demanding money from him? Police knew they had a story to push SP on the offensive. Okay, I'm holding an inquiry right now, and once these officers are identified, they will be punished severely. He wrote this forms. But let me first go and apologize to the respected leader. He knew we should not be entertaining the journalists beyond the point. SP Sahib, the seasoned politician, was enjoying the discomfiture of the senior police officer and knew he had leverage in pushing the government on the back foot. Men are troubling everyone, and have personally experienced that in the name of patrolling, harassing and extorting from the citizens he comes. It was apparent that the compliments being given to the government for enhanced patrolling and control over law and order was not sitting well with his own politics. Sir, can you describe what happened? The SP was eager to quickly take action. Your officers treated me like a criminal. They searched my box and even my body. He complained bitterly. I'm so sorry, sir. He genuinely sounded concerned and apologetic. I've called all the patrol officers to the orderly room. I will go and punish them strictly. They cannot be allowed to trouble common people. He described the plan of action. SP Sahib, the police today have become a law into this. Very calm. He was in no mood to give any relief to the scene. By then, the SP had enough and decided to play his trump card. But immediately, your body. He threw the card in a person. Rising politician was taken back. Sir, for your safety, I have given you a bodyguard. Where was he? SP pressed. Oh, I have given him leave to go home to attend the sick. He quickly tried to brush up the question. But sir, you cannot grant leave. And if he has to go, then he should inform us so that we can provide a substitute bodyguard. SP was speaking authoritatively in a formal voice. No, he really had an emergency, so I have to give him the permission. The politician is now on a weaker wicket. Sir, these men take advantage of your generous nature and violate the rules. SP played his role. I will suspend him and give you a bodyguard who will always stay with you. SP was now pressing his advantage. Oh, please, do not suspend him. He took my permission. The politician was lost and realizing that this could lead to information about misuse of his bodyguard. No, sir, he cannot leave without permission. He should have come to me so that I could ensure that you are very well protected. He was in full command. This would not have happened if his bodyguard was there with you. He was not playing his full hand. Oh, please excuse him this time. The seasoned politician had been deflated and was completely on the defensive. No, sir, I cannot. The CM is going to be asking for an explanation and is very concerned at this lapse. SP knew that the politician will have to tone down his number. Oh, I will speak to the CM and tell him that this is a minor matter. The politician quickly grasped the plan for a way out of his scenario. Sir, this will make a headline of this issue. SP continued to press his advantage. Oh, Let me speak to them now. He relented further. So the journalist hanging around was summoned and told that the SP is holding an inquiry into the incidents, he'll be taking action, and the politician made it clear that he is satisfied with the actions of the SP and has full faith in his leader. His backpedaling diffused the matter, and even though some newspapers carried the report, it was confined to a small section within the paper. The matter was naturally brought to the attention of the CM, but he was surprised to hear praise of the local police and the SSP in particular. However, the CM saw this as an opportunity to score a point against the opposition party. In his own press briefing, he pointed out that the patrolling was now ubiquitous, and officers were not sleeping but actively doing their duty. They were checking anyone, irrespective of the status and position. But the chief of the stew, who called the DGP, to direct the police officers that they should differentiate citizens and criminals. That was the last point. Quickly have one more short story. It's also very interesting. Presents another very interesting phenomenon. Please give me another 5 minutes. I will complete that very quickly. So the story is titled Theft at Raj Bhavan. Now, we know that crimes in high places invariably become very serious. Not only is the victim, who's a person, able to draw the intervention of senior officers, but also demand quick action by the investigating officer. This is inevitable given the elitism which is prevalent in the Indian history of privilege garnered by the people based upon their caste, relation with rulers, financial clouds, makes them feel entitled to expect official discretion. And I found it very amusing that there was a very similar incident in UP where one politician's buffalo was stolen. And I'm told that whole district officials had to sort of go and investigate this case of missing buffalo or theft of buffalo. So here's how it began. So please come quickly. I just see the voice of my quivering deputy superintendent. It was genuine and caught my attention. What is the matter? So there has been a theft at Raj Bhavan, and Rajpal sir is very angry. He has asked me to call the DGP to the Raj Bhavan. Me too. What has been stolen? So the governor's daughter has reported that her marriage sari has been formed with great concern. The governor's daughter was recently married in a drinking function at Raj Bhavan and just returned home after spending some time with her in-law. As she searched and looked into her closet and boxes, I said, feeling a little relieved that it was not a major break-in. I think so, but please hurry, the DGPs are running slow. So we rushed to the governor's house. There was, of course, a convoy of siren blazing police cars, and almost all the senior officers of the city were beginning to assemble in their own glittering vehicles studded with flags and insignias. The one star on the number plate indicated that the DIG of the range had reached the Raj Bhavan, and behind him a two-star vehicle pulling in announced that the IG had also arrived to mark his presence. The DGB with 3 stars studded on the vehicle had not yet arrived, but the DIG, CID, and even the special IG branch, and also the MBSP pulled in some. This was a VIP case, and all police officers were there to ensure that the sari theft was professionally investigated. I heaved a sigh of relief. I had beaten all these cars, and I was in the front, and I could be seen to be taking command. Now, what happened? How can a thief get into the Raj Bhavan? The DIG was quick to mark his presence. Perhaps he also noticed that the DGP's car was pulling in. Must have been stolen. The IG now asserted his command. He was unhappy in his present position and overlooked for leading the CID. Now it was time for him to display his proficiency in investigating an important crime. He was determined to make that clear to the DGP. Ma'am says she has searched everywhere. The ADC to the governor, a young strapping IPS officer, added helpfully. He had delivered his posting that came with a large house and perks of office. Now it was his time to make sure that the top brass knew he was the conduit to the. It also observed that she has kept his sari in a closet on a hanger, and then based upon some vague feedback. Anyway, the DG came and very angry and said, "Okay, what have you been doing?" We assured that we have got the forensic team and we have a team of investigators going to be dusting the rooms and looking and asking all the questions. So we all trooped in into the Bhavan to meet the governor. The governor was, of course, very seasoned politician. This is probably his second or third or fourth governorship. So we should not have been really worried. While watching the anxious faces, he grinned and smiled softly. मेरे घर में चोरी कैसे हो सकती? I've lived in governor's mansion for more than a decade and never such incident has taken. I'm sure she has misplaced it with hundreds of saris she has, or left it back at her in-laws. My wife is distraught and unfortunately usually suspects some of the servants. Kept talking. You can buy a new sari, but both mother and daughter now want the old sari. Please, some of you go and speak to them and get back. So we quickly formed a team and we went inside and in the control room. And I went inside and took my inspector, Mohammed Aslam. I knew he was the best officer I had for this delicate investigation. The ladies had been informed about the visit and they were fully prepared with the stories. Daughter and husband and one niece was sitting on the adjoining sofa. The guy looked decent, though a little unsettled around his new in-laws. The narration was simple. She had worn the sari during the reception on the wedding day and then kept it in the second shelf. She left the Raj Bhavan the next day and after her honeymoon she had returned the evening. All her clothes were still in the cupboard, including many of her personal items, even some jewelry. The sari was kept on top of all the other clothes and she had personally seen it before leaving the house. We dutifully examined the cupboard that showed no signs of breakage. And the lock which she informed that all the closets and cupboards are generally kept unlocked. Who would steal from here? Her mother was more vociferous. She complained that the governor would not change the old staff even when most are lazy and never work properly. She had to personally supervise every part of the house and look after the kitchen too. The servants just did not know how to maintain this house and kept everything in order. So she said that because of the wedding, some other people had to be brought in for cleaning, and maybe one of them may have stolen the body. So we began checking all the possible places, dusted the cupboards with powder to search for fingerprints, and started setting up a control room and started looking into the statements of who was where and who was coming in and out. At this moment, Mohammed stepped in. In a quiet voice, he asked the particulars for the song, color, design, photos that may have been taken. He quietly asked where the sari was bought and looked into some of the other photographs. He made a quick note of that and said, okay, we'll set up a control room. We started looking into it. So we had a control room and all the officers started taking statements and searching various possible places. In the late evening, I got a call from Mohammed. Said we found the sari. Hey, who stole it? I could not hide my excitement. Said we found it in the laundry room among some bedsheets piled in the corner. He informed and also asked me to come to the large room. By the time I reached the house, excitement was visible. Everyone had heard about the recovery and was praising the police for the quick detection. It was time to meet the governor, who was with the family. There is visibly pleased. Great work. I think the sari must have got entangled with the bedsheet and sent to the laundry room by mistake. Fortunately, it was not washed, otherwise it would have been spoiled. It was clearly in a good mood. The daughter and mother were also looking happy and thanking Uncle Muhammad for being compared with Bollywood heroes. So I thought it was time to acknowledge the hero and inform the governor that I'm going to recommend a promotion for him if I retire the next month. The governor graciously nodded and mentioned that he would recommend to the CEO. He was served tea and biscuits and everything else, and we went back in triumph. The story actually ends here. But the next morning, I got an unexpected call from the daughter. Uncle, I'm not sure if this is the right sari. She spoke earnestly. Not signed. I thought the problem is going to come back. Why? It has the same color and design. I tried to reason it. Yes, it is exactly the same type, but it is not the one I wore on this wedding day. She continued to seem to be a little unsure of herself. How do you know that? I tried to press and put an end to any further. Uncle, now the G had disappeared from her voice. Uncle, the sari's blouse's piece is still there, she exclaimed. So what? I feigned ignorance of women's apparel. See, the sari comes with an extra piece of cloth to make the matching. I had it cut and taken, although I did not use it. Oh, perhaps the tailor did not cut the piece. I'm sorry, we all saw her trying to cut her arguments. No, the sari cannot be worn with any additional piece of cloth attached to it. She answered very sharply. She was adamant and insisted that it was not her wedding sari. I continued to show my ignorance of women's clothing and requested her to check again and see the fit and wash it. So angry, she decided not to pursue the matter. Already her father had been irritated and she had experienced annoyance amongst all her family who thought she had made a mistake. Later I called Muhammad. my residence and served him tea, informing about the forthcoming promotion that was being given. I then told him about the call from the daughter and quietly asked him, what did you think of this solution? At first he denied, kept saying that the sari was indeed mixed with the bed sheets and taken to the laundry. But when I persisted, he said it was rather simple. He sent an officer to the shop, bought the similar sari. It was not difficult for the shopkeeper to remember the sari since the governor's daughter herself had come to the shop to make the purchase. Fortunately, another sari exactly the same was available, which he then got planted in the laundry. So he spoke earnestly. This was the best solution. We would have never recovered the sari, and some innocent man would have been sent to jail unnecessarily. He was pointing to the harsh truth of policing. Now everyone is happy, and he have already compensated me by giving this promotion. He is now enjoying it. What if someone comes to work? I was still worried about the problem reviving itself and wondering how the DG, CM, and governor would react. Then the shopkeeper will not say a word, and no one else knows about this. What if the daughter informs the governor? I was still apprehensive about this plot. I heard a call and went and convinced her. He tried to reassure her. Apparently, after speaking to me, the daughter called Muhammad and complained that it was not the right side. However, we went to the Raj Bhavan and showed a curry stain on the pallu as evidence that the sari was worn during. Still unconvinced, she nevertheless accepted it. So how did the stain come on the sari? The system. That is another story. Of the piece. I believe most of the stories are a little light-hearted, kind of a commonplace. Some of them are a little dark, point to some of the more challenging situations that the police have to face. But through these stories, what I'm trying to do is again have this important lesson. The criminal justice system that we have today is unable to deliver the justice. Think about in all of these situations, the police are expected to register an FIR and investigate and prosecute. And that's not the solution that is really designed. You have to find some different way. And in this, in our system, working through a liberal democratic society, you have to hear all the voices, you have to hear all the concerns that are brought in, and then try to sort of weave your way and find very creative methods to try and address. As I mentioned, law will only set a boundary and give a lot of discretion to the officers. Police have to use that discretion wisely and the larger good interest, for which, of course, we have mechanisms and we can do that. But we have to acknowledge that the police are indeed solving problems created by the social political system that we have, and they are trying to find some creative ways of addressing those problems. My point is that we need to recognize this particular role, which is not at all sort of wrong. And once we acknowledge it, then we need to train our officers and help them develop their functions and problem solving abilities. And for that, we obviously need a very different kind of organization. So, new kind of a conceptualization of how we must police India, given the socio-economic political reality we have, is something that has to be. And I hope through my book, I want to raise this issue and look forward to. Thank you, sir. So sorry that book was late. Really keen to hear about.
Dr. Arvind Verma here. Many people would have heard about him, and a great artist also. पर ये गाली देना उनका होता क्या गला बन गया कोई पल्लव के सामने उनकी पेशी हुई थोड़ी देर तक बात करते रहे फिर जी ने पूछा मुखर्जी साहब लोग कहते हैं कि आप गाली बहुत देते हैं बदली साहब ने कहा कि किस बच्चों ने कहा तो भुवन भल्लापन ने अपना सिर पीटा, कहा शायद हम इसको मगर ये गन I mean, police, I mean, life in police can be very hilarious also at times. That apart, coming on a more serious note, Arvind has talked about police being problem solvers. I'm glad he has touched upon this theme because police are more often than not looked upon as people who are not doing their job, brutal or callous, use third-degree methods, harsh, indulge in extrajudicial killings and all that. The tragedy of the Indian police is that our good work generally goes unrecognized, unreported, not eulogized, and most of the time we are getting brickbats for our failings, which always get reported, which always get highlighted. But one major area where Arvind has also, to which Arvind has drawn our attention, is the area during the pandemic. The pandemic, you saw a new face of the police, a completely new face, and even the Prime Minister acknowledged. And he said that police acted as the front line of the front line. That was Prime Minister's compliment to the Indian police, and it was generally recognized. And one survey which was carried out that indicated that police popularity had jumped by something like 60% during those days. And that was happening, of course, I was keeping my fingers crossed. How long will it stay at that level? Because it is, there always, the downs are more prominent than the ups in India's recent history. But nevertheless, you see, there are two other major events to which I would like to draw your attention. Kumbh Mela, for example. The last Kumbh Mela had a total crowd during that period of Kumbh, the entire period of Kumbh. 24 crore people visited the Mela area during that period. Now imagine such a mass of humanity moving in a particular direction, wanting to have bath at a particular time, at a particular hour, at a particular place, Sangam. And this huge crowd is managed by the police, and then we ensure their orderly dispersal after the festival. I mean, it's no easy feat. It requires tremendous amount of planning, a tremendous amount of arrangement, tremendous amount of manpower deployment, and also you need a little bit of good luck also. But then fortune favors the brave, as they say. So the hard work always pays off. The Kumbh Mela passed off peacefully without it. Can anybody in the West even think of, let alone plan for it? Such a gathering of humanity at one place, given point of time. And if you talk of a gathering on a particular day, on one year of Sunday, I think it was about 4 crore. That is the maybe slightly less. So these are achievements which generally go unrecognized. The press would only say, Mera Shanti Purva nikal gaya. Something had slightly gone wrong, then would have been flashed all over the Inzam and everybody thing, paisa kha. Pul gir gaya, 10 aadmi mar gaya. And from my experience of policing in India, I would say policing in India is tougher than in any other part of the world. Why do I say that? When I try to examine what are the biggest problems of police, say in US, not over all that. And I found that the reflection of all those problems is there. There is hardly a problem, police-related problem in any part of the world which is related in some part of the country or the other. So that's why it's about the fact that I think more than 35,000 people have lost their lives since independence in the discharge of their duties. The highest, absolutely the highest. If you combine the figures of the entire Europe, it won't come anywhere near that. So this job is very tough, and experiences worth remembering, worth relating, worth recounting and has tried to do, compliment him for that. He spoke about the criminal justice system, very bad shape. It is incumbent on all of us in our own small little way to contribute towards its improvement, towards its reform, towards its betterment. I don't believe in keeping things as they are. I was talking when before this program began. I mentioned to someone, we're discussing an article which is published in the Indian Express, which is on a very pessimistic note. But that article also acknowledges that there are some people trying to improve things. And then I said that as a student, I had read somewhere in study of history by Toynbee. He said that it is the creative minority in any society which keeps the society going forward. What he meant. And even if it is 10, 15, 10% or 15% people right track, believe in doing their duty as per the law of the land and believe in upholding the rule of law and keep on agitating for improvement, I think it is a healthy sign. We should not, we need not be pessimistic. These words, thank you once again, Arvind. Congratulations.
I'm going to request my friend.
अरविंद दास सिंह जी, ऋषि शुक्ला जी, मेरे बहुत सारे मित्र जो इस ऑडियंस में बैठे हैं, बहुत दिनों तक मैंने काम किया उनके साथ, हम लोग एक दूसरे को जानते भी हैं। अरविंद और मेरा बड़ा अजीब संयोग रहा है जीवन में। जैसे अरविंद बहुत से छोटे लगते हैं मुझसे, और किसी को विश्वास नहीं हुआ कि अरविंद और हम एक ही क्लास में पढ़ते थे IIT का। हम दोनों ही उत्तर प्रदेश के निवासी हैं और हम दोनों को बिहार कैडर मिला और फिर हम दोनों ही एक जिले में SP और कलेक्टर के रूप में पदस्थ। ये कहानी, इसमें एक दो कहानियां हैं जो वहाँ की हैं, बेगूसराय की। और इंटरेस्टिंग बात ये भी है कि हमारे बच्चे भी एक ही दिन पैदा हुए, एक ही अस्पताल में। इनका छोटा बेटा और मेरी दूसरे नंबर की बेटी दोनों उसमें मोकामा के अस्पताल में पैदा। बहुत सारे हमारे, और हम लोगों ने साथ साथ ही IAS की तैयारी भी की थी, सिविल सर्विस की तैयारी उस वक्त, और उसी इलाहाबाद में हम लोगों ने इम्तिहान भी दिया। तो काफी सहयोग रहा है, और एक मित्र के रूप में और एक ऐसे व्यक्ति के रूप में, और जब पुलिस में आए तो नॉर्मल जो होता है हम लोगों का नौकरी में, अरविंद को एक बहुत ही कंसेंसियस पुलिस ऑफिसर के रूप में बिहार में जाना। ये रहे, पटना में रहे, उसके बाद गया में, बेगूसराय में, दुमका में। एक सब लोग बोलते थे कि ये पुलिस ऑफिसर है, लेकिन बड़े अजीब तरह के, अलग तरह के पुलिस ऑफिसर। और पुलिस ऑफिसर जो अपेक्षाएं लोगों को होती है कि भाई थोड़ा दबंग हो और थोड़ा लोगों को बढ़िया से दिखाए कि हम कितने, मतलब डराए लोगों को, उस तरह की इनके अंदर में चीज नहीं थी। तो उस वक्त भी ऐसा जो बोलते हैं कि एक गरीबों के प्रति, दबे कुचले लोगों के प्रति, थोड़ा जो मार्जिनलाइज्ड हैं उनके प्रति जिस प्रकार का एटीट्यूड और अप्रोच जब चाहिए था, उस तरह की अप्रोच अरविंद के अंदर थी। इनके एकेडमिक्स में आने का किस्सा भी बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है, और मैं अरविंद की परमिशन सुनाना चाहूंगा उसको। अरविंद ने सब जिले वगैरह करने के बाद ये PhD में इन्होंने वैंकूवर में साइमन फ्रेजर यूनिवर्सिटी, राइट, साइमन फ्रेजर यूनिवर्सिटी में PhD करने के लिए गए। तो वहां से PhD क्रिमिनोलॉजी में करके आए, और हम लोग सब बड़े प्रसन्न थे। मैं भी पटना में उसमें था। तो ये हुआ भाई, अब बात थी कि अब अरविंद को पोस्टिंग चाहिए, प्रमोशन भी चाहिए था। उस वक्त तक ये बन गए थे DIG के, फिर इनका प्रमोशन होना चाहिए था। तो पता लगा कि न तो इनकी प्रमोशन हुआ, और इन्होंने मिलने का प्रयास किया मुख्यमंत्री जी से। मुख्यमंत्री से मिलना तो दूर रहा, इनको डायरेक्टर जनरल ऑफ पुलिस से मुलाकात। उन्होंने भी कहा कि नहीं, इनके पास वक्त। और बाद में इनको आरा में जो बिहार माउंटेड पुलिस होती है, घोड़ों वाले जो बटालियन होती है, उसमें इनको, तो बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग और बड़ा क्या बोलते हैं, आयरॉनिक है कि जो आदमी क्रिमिनोलॉजी में रिसर्च करके आया, पीएचडी करके आया, उससे किसी ने ये नहीं पूछा कि भाई आप क्या पढ़ के आए हैं, आपके ज्ञान का क्या उपयोग हो सकता है, बिना उससे पूछो, और उसको मतलब बजाय किसी अच्छी जगह पोस्ट करने के, जो बिहार की जो माउंटेड पुलिस आरा में है, उसमें बना गया। उसी दौरान अरविंद को इंडियाना यूनिवर्सिटी से ऑफर आ गया प्रोफेसरशिप का, असिस्टेंट प्रोफेसर। और उसके बाद हम लोगों ने कहा कि भाई नहीं यही रहो, लेकिन ये नहीं माने, कहा कि नहीं नहीं अब मैं हूँ। और यही कहानी है इनके पुलिस से लेकर के वो एकेडमिक बनने तक। तो ये भी हम लोगों का सौभाग्य रहा है, मेरा सौभाग्य निश्चित रूप से रहा है कि मैंने अरविंद को जाना एक ऐसे बहुत अच्छे इंसान के रूप में, एक अच्छे मित्र के रूप में। और जो कहानियां इन्होंने लिखी है, बहुत रोचक कहानियां, मैंने, हालांकि इनके प्रकाशक ने तो किताब दी नहीं, लेकिन इन्होंने पीडीएफ फाइल मुझे भेज दी थी, तो मैंने उसे पढ़ डाली, मैंने 2 दिन में 3 दिन में। तो बहुत रोचक कहानियां हैं। और जैसे प्रकाश सिंह जी ने कहा कि कहानी लिखने का एक मतलब प्रयोग करना, ये भी बड़ा कठिन प्रयोग है निश्चित रूप से, लेकिन बहुत रोचक तरीके से इन्होंने उनको विस्तारित किया है। और मुझे लगता है कि सारी कहानियों में देखिए मॉरलिटी या मोरल टाइप की शिक्षा वाली किताब नहीं है ये, लेकिन उन कहानियों से भी कुछ निष्कर्ष निकलते हैं, कुछ अच्छी चीजें निकलती हैं, और वही अपने आप में उसका एक कंक्लूजन है, और वही उसका निष्कर्ष है। तो बहुत रोचक पुस्तक है, जरूर पढ़ेंगे लोग इसको। ये बात सही है कि उनकी पुरानी किताबें हम लोगों ने थोड़ा बहुत ग्लांस किया है, लेकिन इतने उसमें डेटा और स्टैटिस्टिक्स और रिसर्च रहती है कि उसको फिर मतलब बड़ा मुश्किल होता है उसको पढ़ना। एक जो चीज जो प्रकाश सिंह जी ने भी कही, अरविंद ने भी कही, कि हम लोगों के यहाँ जो सिस्टम्स हैं, वो सिस्टम्स इतने टूटे फूटे हैं कि हमारे हमारे हमसे अपेक्षाएं भी बड़ी अजीब अजीब तरह की होती हैं। अब पुलिस से अपेक्षाओं के बारे में तो यही, जैसे कहा, क्रिमिनल जस्टिस सिस्टम लगभग टूटा हुआ है, सच्ची बात तो ये। और जब आदमी कोई क्राइम करता है, तो क्राइम करने के बाद लोग समझते हैं कि अगर उसको पकड़ लिया गया, अरेस्ट कर लिया, और जितने दिन तक वो बेल के पहले रहेगा वही उसका पनिशमेंट, बस। उसके बाद कोई ये नहीं सोचता है कि इसने मर्डर किया है तो इसको बढ़िया से फांसी की सजा मिलेगी, क्योंकि वो मर्डर की सजा कम मिलेगी, 15 साल 20 साल के बाद नंबर आएगा तब कुछ सजा मिलेगी। तो इसलिए क्या हो रहा है कि सब लोगों से, सब व्यवस्था से अलग अलग एक्सपेक्टेशन हो गए। पुलिस से हो गया भाई पकड़ लीजिए इसको, किसी तरह से इसको बेल न मिले, जितना 6 महीना 8 महीना रह जाएगा वही काफी। ये जो समस्या हो गई है पैदा, उससे बहुत हिलेरियस सिचुएशन तो पैदा होती है, लेकिन बड़ी अजीब तरह की स्थिति है जो कि बहुत अच्छी नहीं है। और मैं समझता हूँ कि जो अपराध बढ़ना या बाकी लोग बिल्कुल वैसे हो गए हैं, मतलब उनको कोई डर ही नहीं लगता है, उसका कारण यही है कि उनको पता है कि हमारी जो जो कन्विक्शन की जो रेट है, हमारा जो कितने दिनों के बाद आएगा, तब तक गवाह सारे हॉस्टाइल हो जाए, कुछ होगा नहीं। इसलिए लोग समझते हैं यही न्याय है, न्याय व्यवस्था ही, पुलिस की व्यवस्था ही न्याय की व्यवस्था बन गई, और इसीलिए वो समझते हैं पुलिस ही न्याय करते हैं। कुछ दिनों पहले हैदराबाद में लोगों को एनकाउंटर हुआ, अरे साहब लोगों ने पूरी माला पहनाई लोगों को, और अभी एनकाउंटर हो रहा है, लोग मारे जा रहे हैं, तो लोग बड़े अच्छे लगता है, भाई ठीक है, इन अपराधियों को और कोई कुछ कर नहीं सकता, चलिए पुलिस ही कर रही है। अब एक तरह से देखा जाए तो ये कोई न्याय व्यवस्था नहीं है, ये तो बेसिकली गिव्स लॉट ऑफ डिस्क्रिशन टू द पुलिस, एंड लॉट ऑफ ऑफिसर्स आल्सो एक्चुअली एंजॉय दिस होल सिचुएशन। बट अब यही रियलिटी है। मैं भी प्रकाश सिंह जी, मैंने 2 कहानियां छोटी छोटी सुनाना चाहूंगा। अभी हम लोग एकेडमी में पढ़ के आए और पूरा जोर शोर से हमने पढ़ाई की, कानून बताया गया, देखिए 107 ऐसे होगा, 116 ऐसे होगा, सब कुछ। और एकेडमी की जो नॉलेज है, वही बेसिकली अरविंद भी यही कह रहे हैं कि जो हम लोगों के कानून की किताबों की जो नॉलेज है, वो अल्टीमेटली जब अप्लाई करते हैं तो बड़े अजीब तो चीजें सॉल्व नहीं होती। तो मेरा अपना पर्सनल अनुभव यही है कि मैं जब एसडीओ बना एक जगह में, तो सारे के सारे मैंने किताब पढ़ रखी थी कि 107 क्या है और 116 क्या है और कैसे बॉन्ड बनाया जाए किया जाएगा। लेकिन जब उसने वकील ने अपना आर्गुमेंट करना शुरू किया, देखिए हुजूर ये झगड़ा करता है, इसने ये किया है वो किया है, मैं सुनता रहा। सुनने के बाद अब मुझे समझ में आया कि मैं क्या लिखूं इसमें। तो मेरे रजिस्ट्रार ने कहा हुजूर ऑर्डर रिजर्व कर दिया। दिस स्टेट मी। उसी तरह से एक और कहानी है। मैं डिस्ट्रिक्ट मजिस्ट्रेट था पूर्णिया नाम के जिले में, बहुत से लोग जो बिहार से परिचित हैं वो जानते होंगे। तो उसमें प्रधानमंत्री जी आ रहे थे, बड़ी जोर से बाढ़ आई थी बिहार में 1987। और 1987 की बाढ़ में पूरा ध्वस्त हो गया था नॉर्थ बिहार, सहरसा, पूर्णिया, खगड़िया, बेगूसराय, बहुत सारे जिले, कटिहार। तो राजीव गांधी उसमें प्रधानमंत्री जी थे, वो आ रहे थे और चारों तरफ पानी भरा हुआ था। रिलीफ कैंप्स लगे हुए थे। रिलीफ कैंप्स में बहुत पानी भरा हुआ है, तो जानवर भी इधर से उधर भाग रहे हैं, जानवरों की भी समस्या हो जाती है बाढ़ में। वहां पे कुछ लोग जो थे उनके सुअर थे, और सुअर भी चारों तरफ हेल्टर स्केल्टर भाग रहे थे। तो किसी ने कहा कि भाई साहब, अगर प्रधानमंत्री जी इधर से गुजरेंगे और कोई सुअर इधर से निकल पड़ा तो बताइए क्या स्थिति होगी। ये बड़ा सीरियस प्रॉब्लम है। आदमी को तो मान लीजिए हम लोग रोक सकते हैं, सुअर को कैसे रोकें। तो उसको जो है हमने किसी तरह से कहा कि हमारे एसडीओ थे अररिया में, उदय प्रताप सिंह जी, अभी आप लोग कुछ जानते होंगे। तो मैंने उदय से कहा कि भाई उदय, ये जो है इसी तरह से सुअर का इंतजाम। उदय ने बड़े इनोसेंटली कहा, देखिए सर, एकेडमी बहुत सारी ट्रेनिंग हमको दी गई, लेकिन सुअर का कैसे किया जाएगा ये ट्रेनिंग हमको नहीं दी। लेकिन उसने ही केम आउट विद इंजीनियस सॉल्यूशन। उसने कहा जिसके, अच्छा बाकी कोई भी आदमी, पुलिस वाला आया, कोई सुअर को कहते, वी डोंट नो हाउ टू कंट्रोल दैट थिंग। तो कहा कि जिसके सुअर है उसी को हम लोग एक बाड़ा बना देते हैं और वो लोग जानते हैं कैसे कंट्रोल करना है। हम उनको इंसेंटिव दे देंगे, भैया एक सुअर भीतर करो इसके 100 रुपया। दिस इज द सॉल्यूशन व्हिच वी एक्चुअली फाउंड आउट। और उनके आने से 2-3 घंटा पहले था अपना, देखिए हुजूर मैंने 7 सुअर पकड़ लिए, किसी ने कहा मैंने 5 पकड़ लिए, चलो भाई तुरंत पैसा। तो देयर आर मल्टीपल वेज। और हमारे प्रदेश में, बिहार में तो अलग ही, और कुछ भी और ज्यादा ही एक्सेंचुएटेड है बहुत सारी सीरियस प्रॉब्लम। जैसे प्रकाश सिंह ने कहा कि सब समस्याएं वहां हैं, और पूरा देश की सब समस्याएं, लगभग हर समस्या वहां पर है, और हर हर तरह की सिचुएशन है, उसको आपको डील करना है। तो वही होता है इसमें। अरविंद ने बहुत सुंदर तरीके से इन कहानियों को बताया है, और मुझे लगता है ये बहुत रोचक किताब है। उसके लिए बहुत बहुत कॉम्प्लीमेंट्स मेरी तरफ से। और मुझे पूरा विश्वास है कि इससे और तुम अगली कहानियां कुछ और लिखोगे, बिकॉज कहानियों की कमी किसी के पास नहीं। ये जरूर है कि हम लोग कहानियां लिखना नहीं जानते, तो उसमें तुम अब पारंगत हो गए, हम लोग प्रयास करेंगे तुमको कुछ और कहानियां बताएंगे।
सुअर का कहानी तो
प्रकाश सिंह जी, वर्मा डिस्ट्रिक्ट। अरविंद जी को बहुत सालों से I have met him the first time. They were wondering why he asked me to come and speak. I was trying to find out the pictures of documents. देखो बहुत सारे लोग। Then I later today when he sent me the PDF, I discovered that his son is also named Rishi. That I thought probably that is why Rishis have to live up to their name. That's a very difficult task. So you have been doing a lot of academic work, and you have published books and articles and activity based on your academic training of mathematical modeling and many more such precise things, very structured things. That is what your research is. This is a complete change for you. Writing anecdotal stories about something that happened 30 years ago, but your way of presenting it is so lucid. Well, you know, you've been able to create and weave the ambience of, let us say, those days of Bihar or wherever parts. Absolutely, very, very simply. In fact, by reading, and I read very little of it actually, sir, because I got it today morning. But the way you have been able to sort of draw a picture of the SP's camp office or the city, it's remarkable. And I'm sure you must have kept some notes otherwise to remember those things and bring it out with such easy simplicity is absolutely astounding to me. But you've spoken about in each story, you've spoken about an incident which has a lot of lessons as you have been speaking. When you talk of police, the problem solver, actually, this is something which, well, I have been speaking separately, I have been calling it as police is the crisis manager or a conflict handler. In India, there is no agency of any sort which addresses any conflict, be it a family dispute, be it a group dispute, anything. It is not even a conflict between two departments, the police just go up and solve it. And nowhere in law, nowhere in CRPC, has police been given this role of uh, negotiating or trying to resolve this conflict. Each time the SHO calls up a young boy who's trying to stalk a girl of neighborhood and gives him a slap and tell him, "दोबारा ऐसा करोगे तो मैं जेल में डालूंगा." This actually, in today's law, would put him behind bars because he is duty bound to register an offense of 354 at the IPC. The moment he does that, and the boy is arrested, every person in the neighborhood and the girl's family and the parents would on the girl, and because of you, that boy's future is being spoiled. Let us withdraw this. I have seen young girls committing suicide because there's so much of pressure. Even the parents turn back to the girls and say, "तुम्हारी वजह से ये हुआ." This is a situation where a person is trying to solve a problem without actually going to the legal recourse. He's actually he's not entitled to anything that the police does to solve a problem. Is actually not law. That is the most surprising thing. I mean, in so many years, we haven't been able to give police the process, the procedure, the lawful procedure to handle or resolve the conflict. But be it talking about COVID, be it the plague of Surat, where at the end of the third day, it was only the police personnel left there, be it the super cyclone in Odisha, be it the earthquake in Bhuj, his last man standing is always that ill-trained, poorly paid, much maligned police constable. He's still there. He's the obvious symbol of the government. Actually, the authority to which everybody looks up. That actually has been the role of police all these years where we have been working. So I think that is probably the point which is the key to your book. Acknowledge that the police actually solves problems, not one. Every single thing which comes across the government, it's, it's my experience that in every problem, the police is asked and told to give a solution. In fact, the book is entitled She Must Not Die. There is another catchy phrase. The police shall not fail. The police will not fail. The police have to give a solution. If nothing else, then they have to be sacrificed as a scapegoat that you could not handle the situation. Therefore, you have to be punished. As I remember, one of the chief ministers once said, "हम क्या कोई दरोगा है जो suspend कर दिए जाएंगे?" Which means it's only daroga who can be suspended. Suspended to save the government from some embarrassment. Suspended for whatever thing he has done or not done to assuage the public expectations. Somebody has to pay the price, and invariably, it has been the police which has been paying the price. Prakash Singh sir said that anything which is not good has been highlighted by the media. But it's a amazing situation which has happened in this social media narrative time. Probably the role that police played in COVID pandemic, they have been playing all along. And in such big crisis also, the police has stood up all problems, but it has never been projected through the social media and the media so positive. I think, I mean, the government wanted the positive projection to be made, and therefore all the resources were given to make that positive projection. And it was very I remember in 2016 there was a Kumbh in Ujjain, not as big as P and Allahabad. We trained and retrained the police, 20,000 or more people. And after a month, the image which actually became the icon for that home police Vyavastha in state of MP was that of a young constable carrying an old woman in his arms as he took her down a railway station bridge. That was the image which police got created, and we were also happy that that sort of a positive image could be created. Of course, it's difficult to obtain this sort of a thing, but you have in your narratives pointed out how the entitlement arrogance of our politicians and senior people takes precedence over everything else. Now, this actually the story of this democratic India law must be enforced, but must be enforced from the next man. I am exempt, I am above the. This is what if the general thing पालन करो कानून का, but मेरे साथ ना सबके साथ. Today, in a 6-lane highway, you have lived in US life, when do you see a person coming on a wrong side? Here, every single highway, you will see people driving down the wrong way. Not only people, and you name anything and everything you find there. Today, in my state of MP, every highway, at the night time, there are about every half a kilometer, there are about 10 or 15,000 people. Where would they go in the rains? They would come and sit on the complete highway. And, I mean, this is the problem. We don't want to resolve the issue. We continuously want to take it further. Probably Jain Saab would recall there was a major economic policy initiative of the government. And the FHOs are directed with anything, even the social media narratives, FHO are directed to go and make people understand that what this initiative means and what is the good going to come out of it. So at the end of the day, it is the SHO who has to solve every second round in April, March, May. Delhi hospitals are so overflowing, by Delhi everywhere. And the only person who could get a patient admitted was the SHO of that day. That is the strength of police, but it is not get acknowledged. How do we go about doing that? There is this method which is a method through which you are trying to make people understand police is doing such a lot of work, and you have either cleverly or otherwise, because of being a academician, thrown in a lot of scientific things in between, like the Newark experiment, the experiment, which makes it an excellent read not only for police officers but for people who are going to become police officers. Also, probably something which could be in the form of stories taken to the constabulary and make them understand that this is so simple way we are able to solve the issue. But I'm grateful that you allowed me to think about also to finish probably land that I keep to probably keep the book. Otherwise, I wouldn't have probably into things that thank you so much, sir. And may this book and several other books continue to guide young police.
Your nation is far, far better. You all, and we want to sort of have large number of you. Oh, yes. My great friend Sebel from IIT Kanpur.
That's it. My only face. My only issue is that because I'm not a police player, are there any sort of improvements or that we sort of why I'm asking this question is now I feel that the police in every state is under the government's. How can that control? How is it that police works in other big countries, the US? There they are free of all these political. And a person who's committing a crime doesn't have to bend to the stalwarts of the state. Number two, what I've noticed, where I live, I'm grateful that there are states. But in some colonies, what I've seen, only one day you hear that you're moving people from the groups. The others have actually occupied. It is unbelievable. A lot of people have suffered accidents. So one day you will not find. The next day again you find out. Now, just giving some simple things, some reforms. How do you curb these kind of? This is an everyday incident. Sorry for pointing.
No, I think a very valid question.
Yeah, there are
Fortunately, we have very excellent and we have found solutions. You know, IB, the studio,
Yeah, but
and
how
all.
can we make, that's frustrating.
I think you don't solve all the problems at once. You solve them in steps. I don't know, we have so many officers. Anybody want to share how the
The question of these being freed from government control and made responsible to the rule of law. We have the biggest opponent was Prakash Singh. He had been police reforms and we are synonymous. He filed a petition to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court, after a long deliberation, I could speak for hours on that. Since 2006 September, 22nd September, said so and so things may be done. The DGP should remain for 2 years. On that particular day, my state, DGP was appointed. The story you do not know. So I told him, sir, आप तो 2 साल के लिए हो गए. He was removed much earlier, and nobody said a word and nothing. Such petition led to a Supreme Court led monitoring committee that every state had to give an answer. And I mean, some states, some things have happened, but no state has ever created a law which the Model Police Act. Each of them wants to let control from. That is the biggest problem.
Yeah, because-
Supreme Court has not succeeded. So politicians are not willing.
Because nowadays what I see, at the drop of a hat, very trivial thing. Some minister in some state is fighting an FIR or something. Some other individual, a commoner in some other state.
That's
This
the
is this
that's
becomes
a new trade.
no. I think instances because that's to go over here. Just to show the way I feel very upset about it.
One is that we have very peculiar problems, there's no doubt of it. But one thing is very clear also that police are politicized everywhere. It is not a colleague of mine, Johnny Turner, was given a book, Captain in NYPD, and he has hundreds of stories of how police had to listen to the mayor. One of the mayor was Mayor Giuliani.
Okay.
He was controlling the police just like that. Police by the very nature is, and within given the system, the officer has found his succeed ways and all.
That's a great thing. If such could be brought together in brainstorm and there has to be a way.
I think so much, in a democracy, you have to sort of find meandering ways to try and sort of reach your purpose. And you see, you said, type of problems that we are able to solve is extraordinary. That is something which is really remarkable. I think there's no doubt.
One thing what
Everywhere I've said that the Indian police is an open democratic all the problems that we have. No other police force can match it.
my only thing is if it's not very well, maybe that is the thing that you should act first. So that
There's no doubt. I mean,
Yeah.
these resources have to be matched. Those are different problems. Some places they work, some of the southern problems are very good.
it's told in Singapore. This
But it's a little limited democracy. The police, yeah. Okay, thank you. Anybody else has any comment or something?
Rishi has come out with a very good suggestion. That it's about time that the police is involved in the law for resolving. In England and Europe, right, juvenile delinquent acts. If he commits crime like he theft of a car, final arrest. Here we have a juvenile court thrown behind bars. They will caution the system, caution us, and he even taken to bars some of the thieves. He is on the governing body of the school. He has and coming to your question, you may talk a lot about the US police. Don't forget the Sir Rodney King, where the whole world saw. Right? No, so that's it. And we expected them on billions of dollars lost in our city. Let's not run down our own police and don't think that it is and don't think that it is always we've been in the same garden. The minister who get us pastries and all from Flubies. I asked him, I said, I will put them behind bars. And yet, to get me good to me, to care. I'm also a very educated person. I was a university champion in Badminton. My father is very good family lineage. And we respect those. That is, that is my tummy. And he gave a very good example. He said there are 11 MLAs in your district. You not listen to him. You not listen to any of the other 11 MLAs or anything that is illegal. That's I've come to you. We are having tea. उनकी शक्ल से हम पहचान लेते हैं. That's what I'm saying. Even our friend Ram Sevak said, things like managing maybe these are very, very major problems. And that is what the Indian police is really addicted.
One other thing I want to add, that we should also not gloss over this whole idea. We have very serious. Police obviously needs urgent.
Far more police force need to be reformed.
Yes.
Convict those guys in 90 days' time and see how. I give this example of Abu Salim. 28 cases he's been charged. First case is charged, second acquitted, third acquitted, fourth acquitted, fifth convicted. 10 years conviction. There is a sixth case, seventh case, eighth case, ninth case, 10th case, 11th case, nothing like that. So the whole problem is originated, and these guys have to see Ram, Antule, Lalu Prasad Yadav, all these guys with the B signs, Tambram, and say they have fulfilled the. Let us not put on the police. Even today, we'll state police force, convict them in 90 days' time after we charge them. After we charge them. And I guarantee you, 5 years' time, the whole public system is corrupt, convict. बेकार का हम लोग को सब बोला जाता है पुलिस पर, and I'm not party the wrong thing, undoubtedly. But this is something which is controlled, which can be controlled. Convict those guys and acquit them, whatever. I don't care about that. But try them out. What is happening? And then everybody said, oh, police is not doing anything, police is not doing anything. As Prakash said, nah, wait. तो का सबसे बड़ा पनिशमेंट है कि उसको जेल में और 5 लाठी पुलिस का लग गया, वही उसको दैट इज पनिशमेंट. बियॉन्ड दैट ही डजंट केयर. जेल में जाके तो पैर दबाता है. क्या बात कर रहे हैं यार? Which world are we living in?
And to add to that, in the first scam that rocked the country, I happen to be in this line in this background. The key players of that scam are still active with us under a different direction. You see, this, if you carry on with that is where Arvind and the other speakers have really emphasized. His opening remarks was, we need to do it. Otherwise, celebrating an encounter like the kind in Hyderabad is not good for the nation.
Not good at all. Incidentally, they are all now being investigated
by the Supreme Court.
No, yes, the commission that they have all been murder. They're all going to be tried.
Yeah.
One of the, let me just add one point. One of the most efficient criminal justice systems is the United States. They are extremely efficient in processing.
I agree.
They have incarcerated more than 11 million people. The jails are overflowing. They have a system where the judgment can be given in probably. And yet, as you see, crime in the US, the situation which is there, hardly when they give you faith or when they give you trust or something, afraid of the police. Police kill more than 1,100 people every year in the US. And there is no account for that. So the processing of criminal justice is something that we need to. That's what I was trying to say. That when we think about a different way of, when we acknowledge that we have all progress within the situation that we have, then we have to evolve a very different way of functioning, in a different way of organization. Now that's something which is, we can't really lay out.
paid when the trials are not done. I think I still recall when there was a famous called Men written by Philip volumes, the first dealt with Dave Clive, other than the second volume dealt with it. And that critic comment in that book was British never controlled the country. I have never forgotten that. The line in my book. British never controlled the country. And that is exactly what is not happening. आज सबको जेल होने लगे ना, ये जो बारात जाती है और लेके आती है 100 करोड़ रुपया, उसको अगर एक जेल हो जाए 10 साल, not happened.
I think that you are absolutely right. Problem with the police are even more in the judicial system.
Judicial reform ज़्यादा चल रही है. अगला किताब लिखोगे तो उसमें यही लिखना, वो जो काला वर्दी वाले लोग काला.
I'm waiting for all of you to now. Ashok, several. Some other questions. Yeah. Ashok is of course.
We had some very serious issues being raised. I want to go back to what Dr. Sharma and what you said. मैं एक छोटी सी कहानी दे रहा हूँ जो इनके बारे में है लेकिन इनको मालूम नहीं है. तो 2 मिनट सुन दीजिए. डॉक्टर शर्मा ने कहा कि ये लौट कर आए कनाडा से PhD करके. He tried to meet the CM and the DGP. नहीं मुलाकात हुई, चले गए. 1 year later, एम्स दिल्ली में इनके फादर आए हुए थे, Arvind's father, and to meet somebody, a relative of mine. He ran into the chief minister, who was also there. The same chief minister जिससे मिलने के लिए कोशिश कर. हम लोगों ने परिचय करवाया इनके फादर का. चीफ मिनिस्टर बिहार से, उनके अभ्यास कर लिए. ये डॉक्टर अरविंद वर्मा, IPS ऑफिसर जो थे बिहार में चले गए हैं, उनके पिताजी. सीएम ने क्या कहा? वाली को नहीं मालूम होगा. सीएम ने कहा यही तो हमारे यहाँ गड़बड़ है, जितना छोड़वा अफसर है सब यही है और अच्छा अफसर से छोड़ देता है. ये उन्हीं का रिएक्शन था जिन्होंने मुलाकात के लिए समय नहीं दिया. उनके पुलिस में पोस्टिंग की, सब छोड़वा रहता है, अच्छा अफसर चलता.
But that is a smooth politician.
That is a
Smooth politician. He will not want those honest officers.
obviously
Pointing out want Rajiv Jain.
You know.
Tell me.
I'm pointing out the hypocrisy. I'm not saying this one is correct, this one is correct. I feel correct, but this is the interesting fine. The father would have known about it. You would have been about this. The father was very happy. He said, देखिए क्या है, लग रहे हैं, अरे नहीं कुछ. अपने तक की बात सीधी. Mentioned about Arshad Mehta's Kingsby. Now, if I remember, 1957 or 58, 10 years after independence, very famous case of Hilda's famous LIC case. Now, that was one case where a lot of heads and the way the justice was delivered, Muhammad Karim Chakal, that was astounding. During that time. But unfortunately, that's it's not that not be done. That's very example.
Institutions applicate, and that is the trend which one has to arrest.
Absolutely.
Let's not blame just one organization or there has to be the whole system has when we joined the cadre, you could count the dishonest guys on your fingertips. Unfortunately, the other way around. So, this decadence, and that is our main challenge.
Absolutely.
IG, would you like to? One person who was outside the police knows much more about it.
There are things that are systemic, take a long time. And Mr. Prakash said, many others. Dr. did, as we are getting way harder, hope. But we do. That's, there are things in that where some of the things know that we through I want but through the lens of sourcing the ten police themselves, the police supervisor gives training in scandal. Now you can't blame for that. Months falling police station. Aid with so that you don't have kind of choice. These things can be good. I'm saying do what question for all of you. What is it? This small thing. Nobody say that you should not.
I'll come
I
to the
just
question
one-
which
one
Arvind
more
Verma
comment.
and, which Ram Sevak has after doing his PhD in criminology, he's posted in the hotspot in R. What a waste. Training man we have. I have imparted a lot of training. The thing which I find lacking is that anybody who sent for a particular training, I stopped giving lectures on financial frauds only. All those guys who come, they have nothing to do with financial. They don't understand a damn about it. And they've come only to Delhi for a visit. They go back, and that training which is imparted is no use. That is another problem. He's been, he and his wife both have been trainers in the national team. Yeah. And PPR&D. बोलने दोगे यार? I must give you a credential. We are matchmates.
Okay, the present police training capacity in the country is give one in-service course once in 20 years for 2 weeks. So if that is a training capacity in the country, then where are we expecting them to improve training and provide the? This was a study done by the BPR&D, and they found that the present training capacity, later Prime Minister Manmohan Singh also said that the present training capacity in the country, if in-service board training is one training course in 20 years.
That answer. Darshan ji has catch up. Incidentally, he listed 8 points that can be done.
Mr. Rovara has raised a very lot of reforms. Have been carried out without any negative sanction, without any campaign against it. There will be no political. These are the these three steps. Think on need to set what the government does not to put pressure on them. Public NGOs. These are matters.
I want to announce dinner is ready. So if you can start from some place, do that. Meanwhile, some other questions, something, Sanjay? Something? Anybody else? Yes, please. Give us some non-police voices.
आई थिंक मुझे लगता है कि मुझे बोलना तो नहीं चाहिए था इतना मेरा एज नहीं है शायद जितना यहाँ पर भी मेरे इससे ज़्यादा एक्सपीरियंस जुड़ा रीजन जो बेसिक्स हैं डेफिनेटली आपने काम किया होगा लेकिन ये सॉल्यूशन क्या होगा मुझे लगता है कि जब हम बेसिकली आते हैं अपना एफआईआर दर्ज करते हैं आई थिंक डेफिनेटली आप उस पेज पर रहे हो मेजरली एफआईआर
एक मिनट लोग जा रहे हैं
Otherwise, it will be very scandalous. Please, you have the dinner ready. Don't leave us like that. Have a small bite.
कैटेगरी होती है वो किस कैटेगरी के अंदर आते हैं वो सर डेटा गवर्नमेंट के पास भी और जैसे पास भी डेटा कलेक्ट भी होता है क्या गवर्नमेंट या आप जैसे एक बैठे हम कार्य है तो क्या हम उस पर वर्क करते हैं
इसमें थोड़ी सी असमझ है कि क्रिमिनल कौन है या कैसे हैं। जैसे मैंने बताया ना, हजारों लॉ जो लॉ को ब्रेक करता है वो क्रिमिनल। वास्तव में हम सब क्रिमिनल, हम सब लॉ ब्रेक करते हैं। पुलिस जो है वो कुछ लॉ को पकड़ती है, बाकी को जो है वो लॉ इन्फोर्स ही नहीं करती। तो कैसे तो हम लोग क्रिमिनोलॉजी में बात करते हैं कि कैसे तो लोग लॉ ब्रेक करते हैं जानबूझ के, कैसे उसे डील किया जाए। एक व्यवस्था है जिसमें एक ही तरह के कुछ लोग हैं जिनको हम लोग डील करते हैं, बाकी कुछ छोड़ देते हैं। वो थोड़ा सा चेंज है। बहुत बार सवाल पूछा है तो लॉजिकल पर्सपेक्टिव है कि हम लोग व्हाट इज डिविएंस, कौन है अपराधी है, वो क्यों अपराध करता है, ऊपर जो है वो बहुत ठीक आंसर नहीं है। लेकिन ये सोसाइटी के ऊपर है कि किसको हम किसको माने अपराध और उसको कैसे प्रोसेस करें। अपने व्यवस्था बनाती उसमें एक ही ढंग के लोगों को हम लोग अपराधी मानते, वो गलत है। ये बहुत अच्छी बात है, पुलिस को अपनी कम्युनिटी को जानना चाहिए और समझना चाहिए, लेकिन इतनी जल्दी जो ट्रांसफर हो जाते हैं तो वो व्यवस्था भी खो गई। डेटा कलेक्ट करना, उसको प्रोसेस करना, टेक्नोलॉजी बनाई है उस तरह से करना है जरूरी है, तो हो नहीं पाता। Again, everyone, please join us for dinner. You can't leave.
Ah,